Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. We're having another fantastical episode of The Pleasure Zone. If you are brand new to this station, if you're brand new to this particular show, you're in for a treat because we always talk about things that are going to add more pleasure to your life. Sometimes what we talk about are the things that might have taken away our pleasure, like traumas, and how do we get out of that. Sometimes we talk about pleasure from a historical perspective, like what did people used to do? And this episode is about the modern day you, and also the modern day relationship, where we tend to have a lot of people kind of go through phases where everything's like bleh, and like divorces are on the rise, and breakups and all that sort of stuff is on the rise more and more, even over the last 3 or 4 years. And so what are we going to do about it? I think this episode is geared towards the people who are interested in desiring to get back that loving feeling with their relationship. So I do episodes as well on if you are, getting divorced, what are some things you need to get resolved? I think I've talked about that. And if I haven't, I really should. But in this case, we're talking about, and I'm talking to those people who are in relationships and you might be feeling the funk and you just want to be able to get back in gear and feel love again, feel excited to be with your partner. And there are, across the board, lots of people who will tell you, well, most relationships end because of A, B, C, and D. Maybe there's been infidelity, maybe there's a lack of communication, maybe there's money issues. Those are generally the top three. And I would say that for the most part, yes, and there's more. So we'll be talking about that. And what brings me into the interest of talking about people, relationships, and sex and intimacy is that I've had a curiosity about human sexuality since I was pretty young, probably 12, but that I can remember that I actually was curious, interested in wanting to know more. Not that I was sexually active, but what I was so curious that I would listen to, there was a show in Canada called Sunday Night Sex Show with Sue, and she answered all the questions. She was a nurse. She died in the last few years. And she had a really practical approach to all things sex, and she kept it really simple, simple rules like consent, know your body, communicate, tell your partner what they want, show and tell. Like she just had really simple things to do and really pragmatic tools as well, like getting into positions that are more comfortable. So she always had really practical, pragmatic advice, and I always thought she was brilliant. So I think of her as a bit of an inspiration, and bringing it to the world in a different way, where we have topics every week that I talk about specifically geared towards that. And also, as a sex and intimacy coach, which is one of the things that I offer in my practice, as well as being a holistic health practitioner, I like to also see how relationships affect people's health, both mentally, physically, spiritually, and that when you can get, sometimes you got to get your mental health back on track to help your physical health. Sometimes you got to help your physical health to get your mental health back on track, vice versa, all of those sort of things. And all of those impact relationships, and they can affect your sex life, and they can have an impact on that, as well as how that affects, how you throw in anything to do with your your either sexual appetite or lack thereof, and how that is a reflection of other things going on in your health, your vitality, and all that jazz. So, today, the main question that we're going to answer is, how do you bring back that loving feeling? Remember that song, Bring Back That Love and Feeling? That's all I can sing for you guys so that I don't have to pay for like any royalties or whatever. That, and I don't want to scare you away. So, one of the things that you got to ask if you don't have, I don't know why I'm doing that with my hands if you're watching on video, but if you got to ask yourself, what had that loving feeling go away? And a lot of times, what I hear women say is, my partner doesn't listen to me. And if he can't listen to me, I can't tell him what my needs are. I can't tell him what my fears are. I can't tell him what I love, and I can't tell him what I hate, because my partner gets his back up against the wall, and he um, gets where he feels defensive, or the conversation is always defensive, when you might be saying something like, I feel really sad today. And then your partner responds with, well, I don't know what I did to make that happen. I didn't do anything. Well, that's defensive, right? So those kinds of responses will have the partner who's receiving that response feel pretty rejected, neglected, not listened to, and not seen or heard. So they'll withdraw, and that loving feeling can start to go away. So that's one of the reasons why you find that, there's blahs in relationship and the desire to leave. It's like, unless we're talking, and then like those circumstances are pretty common, but then there are circumstances that are unfortunately common as well, that are also things like abuse that is ongoing. That can take away loving feeling. And abuse might not be something that's obvious always. It just might be this like undercurrent of constant neglect or rejection, or constant gaslighting. Maybe there's all kinds of things that could be going on that you might not see as abuse, because it's not physical abuse, and it may be not overt, but it could be subtle. So that can take away the loving feeling. That's a conversation for another day, because that lends to, probably you need to get out if you're in the abuse situation, or if you're the abuser, knock it off, get yourself in check, and get some help. If you are being abused, though, my go-to is find a way to get yourself safe. And we have talked about that on this show as well. So all that aside, we're under the assumption you're in a relationship where you actually enjoy your partner. You like them, you want to make things better. You don't know how, and you don't maybe even know where things went wrong or off or sour. Maybe that's a better word. They went off. They went from, nice cream to like some kind of funky funk smell in your fridge. You're like, that's been sitting there too long unattended, and it goes off, right? So relationships that can sit around and nothing gets attended to for a while can go off and can go sour, just kind of like milk too. So what do we do to save that situation? Well, you could take that milk and pay attention. Like, what's the due date here? Like, am I going to let this sit in the fridge for 6 years and see if it grows legs? No, you're not. So what are you going to do? You're going to be attentive to the needs and when it needs to be used by. So, or utilized by. So in relationship, you also need to know what the requirements from your partner are. And one of the things to do is, I know it's going to be outrageous, but you can ask them. You can literally ask your partner, like, if you've been in a relationship, say, for a few years, and you're feeling blahs, or things just don't feel exciting anymore, and you're wanting to have dates, you can state, I know this is novel because it's like having a conversation, but you can actually say to your partner, I'd like to have just me and you time. once a week. And then you know what else you can do? You can actually say what that looks like. It might be, I'd like to go for a walk with you once a week. I'd like to go for a car ride with you once a week. I'd like to go to dinner once a week. You're allowed to state that. And if your partner's like, I get what you're saying, and we have 17 children, so it's hard to go to dinner once a week. But what we can do is maybe this. So what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to have some quality time. Let's make this work. So, if somebody's requesting something like more time together, their love language is quality time. So paying attention to those things that your partner says, like, I'd like some quality time. How come you never buy me gifts? Why don't you ever say nice things to me? Why, all of those, like, how come you never hug or touch me anymore? You know, Sometimes those comments can sound a little bit blamey and finger pointing. So you can look at where you have the tendency to do a lot of blamey finger pointing. Like, you never say this. You're always stopping me from talking. You're always interrupting. You never think of me and you never buy me things. Well, if your partner says these things repeatedly, what they're telling you is their complaint about how they're not feeling loved. So it's like, well, you never buy me gifts. Then what they're saying to you is that their love language of gifts is not being fulfilled. And then it's good to know what they want. You might even have your partner might say something like, well, you never bring me flowers. And what they're saying is they would like some flowers. So not always are people in a position where they have the communication skills to be able to say that, because there's often a lot of fear of rejection that is underlying the confidence. It's like the confidence isn't there to be able to say, this is what I'd really like this. Like, this is what I need right now. Is that something you can deliver? And your partner has the right to say yes or no. So just because you ask for it doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it does mean that you took the courage and you did your part, you asked. And if your partner cannot deliver on the things you're asking for, in order to in order to in order to well, I'm off track. So yeah, if your if your partner has not listened to you, then the chances are you are going to probably feel pretty neglected. So, and if you've asked for things and they haven't responded, then you know what? It may be time to either engage with having somebody who's sex and intimacy coach, or it may be time to have intervention of some other kind, or sometimes taking some time away doesn't mean you're getting separated or divorced or breaking up, but taking the time away to actually have the desire to see each other again would be good. So it can often happen that you might have just had way too much time in each other's face and space, and you need time away. I say this because I'm like friends with Amish couples who they take time away from each other too, which kind of blew my mind, because when I first met them, I thought these guys probably stick together all the time. And like, I never thought of the wives like going away on their own to visit family or to visit friends, but they do. And it's so healthy, and it's so cool to see that um, in a community that is kind of, from the outsider's point of view, kind of regarded as pretty closed, they are really incredible with their the way that they manage relationships, especially the like the freedom, right? So, and being able to ask for things. So if you need the time away, ask for it. There's no shame in it. It's not an insult to your partner. And it might give you that longing and desire that when you come back, and the appreciation for your partner, especially if you're not feeling appreciated or you're realizing that you've lost appreciation for your partner, sometimes stepping away for a bit and even putting yourself into a position where you're seeing other couples, sometimes it'll make you go back and go, wow, I'm incredibly lucky. I feel that way every day because I do talk to people quite a lot about their relationships. And even when I'm talking to them about their health, relationships come up. And it reminds me every day how lucky I am to have a really cool husband. So, partner in life and partner in laughs. So, what do we need to bring back that loving feeling? I mentioned the laughs part. Sometimes it's a good laugh. Like you just need to lighten up. And we'll talk about some ways to lighten up. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So, we're talking about how do we bring back that loving feeling? How do we, in relationships that are, more than 10 minutes old, and you have the whole phase of, like the whole honeymoon phase is gone. And you're kind of like, I really loved that honeymoon phase. I don't really know how to bring that back, or can I bring that back? One thing that happens is that relationships evolve. So it's not about making your relationship into what it was. It's not about saying, I wish I had to kind of say you've been with your partner for 30 years. It's not about bringing back what you were 30 years ago, because let's put a few factors into the reality of this. 30 years ago, your body probably operated differently than it does today. For example, for me, even 5 years ago, I didn't need glasses, and now I do. I'm, as my husband says, you're hurtling towards 50, although he's 60. So as you're hurtling through time and space and nearly 50, your body starts to change, and also your reaction to things may change too. So, your body's changing. So why wouldn't your relationship to your partner also change? Your feelings can change, your interests can change. You can develop, new thoughts, ideas. I've watched people go through spiritual awakenings, religious excitation, I would call it, because, sometimes people get super highly religious at certain stages and ages of their life. And those things, all those reactions and ways of being will impact your relationship. So you're not going to necessarily going back to where you were, but that love can be there and you can bring it in a new way. So when I wrote, let's bring that loving feeling, it's more about remembering that you love your partner and that you're in this together, whether you're in it with one person, or you're in it with five, whether you're in a polycule and you're polyamorous, it's irrelevant. Like, all relationships can kind of go stale. So how do you remember what needs to be done in order to have the excitement back in relationship? And a lot of times it's just being aware, like really paying attention to what your partner is saying. If your partner is requiring space from you, then maybe you've been overly needy. If your partner just requires space in general because they're just more of a quiet introvert, then honor that and give that to them so that they can recoup and be more present when they are with you. So maybe your partner is, I had mentioned some of the 5 love languages, whether it's gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, touch, and well, I'm sure there's another one. And it's really funny because every time I mentioned the 5, there's always one that I'm probably lacking in the moment that doesn't come up in my awareness as something that I remember. I did say words of affirmation. So we've got gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, touch. Then there's another one. Anyway, so usually complaints will come around whatever isn't being fulfilled. So if you can listen, you can pick up on those cues that your partner is telling you, because they're actually, I bet you, if you're in conversation with your partner, even in communication, so even if you are hard of hearing or if you're hard of if you're deaf in any way, then you might not have, you'll still communicate. So just keeping it to communication, as long as you're communicating with your partner about what's going on, consider yourselves in a good position. So if you're not feeling happy, but you're able to still communicate, you might not be finding resolution or answers yet, but the good thing is you have the door open. Right. Acts of service is the 5th. Awesome. So probably because that's my whole life. I just don't even think of it. So when you're looking at the things like, you don't ever take out the garbage, that would be like an act of service. Or you never help me do this, or I'm always doing this. I always do all the groceries. I always cook dinner. Well, if you say all that and your partner just brushes you off because they're not listening, then there's something deeper going on, because they're probably also not feeling respected or seen or heard. And that's a great time to bring in mediation, either with a relationship coach or with somebody who can be a therapist, somebody that can intervene, that's neutral, that can help you each other see what's going on and take responsibility for your actions and your choices and all the things you're doing, because it's not about changing your partner. It's about seeing what your actions and reactions are and being a better person in the relationship, rather than trying to make your partner into the perfect person for you. So if you think you're getting into coaching or relationship coaching or any kind of coaching that involves more than 2 people, like relationships, sex and intimacy, that sort of thing, and marriage counseling, if you're there to change your partner, it's not going to work. If you're there to change you, your chances are way higher that it's going to work. If you're there to learn and grow and listen and provide examples and then take feedback and grow from that, your chances of growth are fantastic. And your chances of having your relationship work are fantastic. So there are absolutely times where you need to bring in mediation. If you don't have the language skills, the communication skills to be able to speak with your partner and create resolution between the two of you, then bringing somebody else in is really a great idea. So some of the top people that are recommended are, you could have relationship coaches, you can have, even a lot of people will go to their priest or pastor. They also are trained in negotiating relationship situations, and they have it from more of a religious perspective, if that's something that you need to bring yourself back to center around certain faith. If it is something where you're arguing about something that isn't faith-based and you just want to look at some of the things more like, and we're talking about like, you don't spend time with me, you don't do this, you don't do that, and faith isn't really part of your relationship or your focus, then you can always go to somebody that is like a relationship counselor, or somebody like me as a relationship coach, and see what that offers you. But you have to be willing to listen both to yourself, your feelings, everything that's going on with you, to be able to communicate that, and then to listen to your partner, and then be able to take action and be consistent with that action so that you can create change that will be sustainable and work. So on the question of how do you bring back that loving feeling, one of the things you want to do to bring back that loving feeling is find out, where did the love, fall off the cliff? Were you just strolling along one day, la-di-da, not paying attention, thinking everything was great, even though at the side of you there was like this nagging going on saying, if you've been strolling through life and you're thinking everything's okay, but you're hearing your partner say, I'm not happy in this relationship, but you're going, oh, but I'm fine, then you're not actually hearing what's going on, and you're living more in resistance, and probably, if confronted, might have your back up against a wall and not really willing to change anything. So, if you're going along la-di-da, life is great, blah, 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 staring at the sky, but all the while there's been this thing nagging at you, you're probably going to fall off the cliff. So if you're falling off the cliff, you got to be able to see and notice that there is a cliff. And what does that mean? Like metaphorically, what's the cliff? Well, the cliff in this case is that taking that one step so far that you're doing without awareness, and it's that step where you've gone that you can't return, right? So if you're stepping off a cliff, you're not returning from there. This is where you've kept on going, not paying attention, you've fallen off the cliff. You can't return from that cliff, because at that point it's done. You're dead. You're going to fall off a cliff and die, right? So the relationship will be dead. There's no turning back. So you want to be aware, and every relationship has a cliff, whether it's when, a partner dies, because all relationships end, whether somebody dies or there's separation or divorce or breakups, whatever, they all end. So you got to know where that cliff is. And is that cliff closer to you than you think it is, because you've been la-di-daing your way through life, not noticing that something might be off, pretending like everything's okay, but it's not. If your partner is complaining to you and you're saying everything is fine, know that everything is not fine for your partner. And what you can say to them is, I feel good in the relationship, and I hear you that you're not happy. Let's look at what I can do that might be, able to help you, or what do you need in order to feel happy in the relationship? And it might be time away. It might be that they need that. And the thing is, your partner might not even know what to say yet because they've never had you be open to the bigger conversation. So it might stump them when you actually say, you know what? I hear you. I hear that you're not happy. And I'm really sorry if I've been contributing to that. And I'm wondering, have we fallen off the cliff? Or is there a way that we can turn around and walk away from that cliff and be safe and figure out what we need in order to feel safe and move forward in a direction that won't take us off the cliff? And how can I be aware of that, like, place where that cliff is, so that I don't keep walking and being negligent? So we tend to, as human beings, operate a lot from fear if we haven't had stable relationships growing up, especially. So if we've had feelings of abandonment or neglect or any of that, the chances of speaking up about what you need are really low, because you don't feel like anybody's going to listen or provide it anyway. So if you are feeling like the love is gone in this relationship, but I'm too scared to say what's going on because I'm afraid my partner will leave me, I'm afraid that I'll be rejected, even if I ask for what I want, nobody's going to deliver it. That is where you got to start with you in building confidence to say, regardless of what my partner says or does, I am going to speak up for myself. If my partner can't deliver it, or what am I willing to do to have my own back, that I can take as an action to say, I'm going to have my own back here, to feel confident. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're walking away, but you might start doing things for you, whether it's like you want to go out and take, I don't know, ballet lessons at the age of 50. And your partner is like, why would you do that? That's crazy. It's not me, by the way. I'm not taking ballet lessons, but it could be something like that, and you do it for you, whether your partner is thinking that's great or not. It's not about rebellion. So that's another thing that can happen, is a lot of rebellion. And I think I'll talk about that, the rebellious part that can really create rifts in relationships, and how do you get out of the rebellion and the sabotage and the self-sabotage. So we'll talk about that when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back to talk about self-sabotage and how to stop that when we come back.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we've been talking about getting into that loving feeling again with your partner, because a lot of times it can just drop away and then you're, struggling to have your relationship come back to even like a resemblance of what maybe you had when you fell in love. So how do we bring that back? And why do you want to? So at some point, there is a point where there's a point of no return. We're talking about it as like falling off the cliff. So you might have that point of no return. You might have already experienced it. If you're in that point of no return, you probably this episode isn't for you. You're probably going through divorce or separation and maybe don't want to go back with your partner because maybe there's been a lot of abuse, maybe there's been manipulation, maybe there's been a lot of things that just you're done. That's fine. This episode is for people who are interested in getting back into that love with their partner. And it may look different, and it probably will look different than the original love feelings you had. So if you've been in a relationship, even for a few months, and that honeymoon period's over and you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't the one, doesn't mean that your partner wasn't the one. Although I'm not a big believer in one person being your only one in this lifetime, but for whoever believes that, that's cool. So how do you do that? And why do you want to? So why I would want to is if I was in a relationship. So for example, in my marriage, if I was feeling like the love was gone and I admire and respect my husband and I like our life together, I would want to bring back the loving feeling to add dimension and depth and quality and fun and play to the relationship. It's one thing to respect somebody and live with them. It can become like roommates or just like, okay, we're family. That's great. But it's another thing to actually have that depth of communication, the intimacy, the intimacy that doesn't mean, so some people refer to intimacy as sex. They're not the same thing. So intimacy as in like the depth of being able to be with each other in a way that's seeing into each other, being willing to be that close. So why would you want to do that in a relationship if it's feeling like those feelings are gone? Is so that you can have a full, rich relationship. And looking at all the different ways that I think when I look at different relationships, I can definitely see where people have their focus, where they've put their energy. So you can sometimes see like in a relationship that the partners have put all their energy into business, or they put all their energy into building a house, like a really big house, or their cars, or their energies in their children, or they haven't had children, so the energy's in each other. But a lot of times people don't invest that in themselves first. So they're investing it in all these external things and they get depleted and they wonder why they're tired and they're bored and they're not feeling fulfilled because they haven't invested it in them and their relationship with, we'll say, the universe. And if you're feeling empty, if you're feeling like alone and bored and lonely, the chances are is there's some level of depth missing in your life. So maybe you haven't meditated in a while. Maybe you don't feel connected to anything and you feel kind of like floating and adrift in the universe. Getting back to your truth, whatever that happens to be for you, whether that is you meditating every day or praying every day or connecting with people and having conversations every day, having that sense of community and connection can really help you grow as a person. And it can also contribute to your family. It can contribute to your relationships on a personal level. And strangely, it can bring back that loving feeling. So when you don't put all of your energy onto your partner as like the only person who's supposed to provide you with entertainment and fun and, you know, all the touch you could ever want, if they're the only person that's allowed to hug you or whatever, then you're going to find that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. They may get overwhelmed to the point where they can't provide that, and they aren't having fun being that responsible for your life, because that's a lot of responsibility to give a person. So taking some of those responsibilities off of their hands, like they don't have to be the person who goes everywhere with you, or they don't have to be the only person that gives you hugs. You can get that from other sources too. Then that can help them have the space to be able to show up for you more presently when they are available, when they are there, when you are together. So I just think, to me, like, I would want to bring back the loving feeling so that I could feel more grounded and rooted in my relationship, and like the fear goes away. So when the love is there, then there's also like a sense of security that can come with that. And some people don't need security, but I like feeling grounded in my home. It's probably in my astrological chart. I don't know. Actually, it is, but that's a story for another day. But I need that feeling of grounded rootedness. And maybe you don't. Maybe you're somebody who like needs like constant spontaneity, and having somebody that's grounding and rooting for you, um, maybe that aggravates you. So know what you need, and don't assume that your relationship should look like everybody else's. And also don't assume that bringing back the love for you is going to look like it is for everybody else. You need to know where it's lacking, where you feel like love is lacking. Then instead of complaining, you can be like, you never blah, blah, blah. Complaints make people put their back up against the wall. Then you get rejection, and then it just goes ugly, and it's not very easy to deal with. So what are you going to do is you're going to find out what is it that you're feeling is lacking. And then the question to ask yourself is, when did this start? And maybe there's been a sabotage going on. Like maybe there was an incident where, for example, I'll give you a scenario that happens quite often. So in partnerships, there might be one partner that is more sexually available, like interested and horny all the time, than the other. So the horny partner might be always asking for affection. And then there's the other partner who's less horny, who's saying no or rejecting. Eventually that horny partner might just go, well, forget it then. I'm just going to go to somebody else. And then they sabotage the relationship by having an affair. So that can happen quite a lot. So there's sabotage there, or self-sabotage could also be necessarily don't have an affair, but then you just go withdrawn, you don't talk about it, you go inner, you hold on to it, you hold a grudge. Then you start to get ill and you don't know why, because you just haven't discussed what's really bothering you at the core, and you don't know how to ask for it. And in fact, you probably, if you did ask for it, or if you tried to ask for it, the wording might have put your partner's back up against a wall, because it was more like pointing fingers and blaming. Why don't you ever, and blah, 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 you never, and you're always going other places and taking care of other things. Like those are things I hear a lot of. So one of the things that's you got to do is take responsibility. Is I would like blah blah blah. You know what I really like is when we get to spend time together, which is a lot different than saying, we never spend time together. I never see you. So which probably isn't true. It's just that you'd like more of it. So state what you would actually like. I really like spending time with you. I'd like to do that more. Can we do A, B, C, and D together? Give some options and ideas because your partner's not a mind reader, and it's really exhausting to try and always come up with ideas when you already know what you want. And if you don't, that is your responsibility to find out what is it that you actually desire, not your partner's responsibility to figure out what you desire. Figure out what you just like. Let's be responsible, like little kids are at Christmas asking Santa for things. They know what they're asking for. I want a Cabbage Patch Kid, Santa. I'll have another Cabbage Patch Kid, Santa, because I love them. So you can ask for whatever. Remember that little kids have audacious asks when they're, look, I want ponies and I want Christmas. I want to see you, Santa, on Christmas. Like they'll just ask for all kinds of things. So if we had that kind of courage to actually sit down and wonder what would we like? What could bring back the loving feeling? And then taking that step to ask for it with no blame attached, just a question, a query. What do you think of this? How do you feel about this? Would you like to try this? Blah, blah, blah. And if you need more help on figuring and navigating those conversations out, feel free to connect with me. Until the end of December 2024, I'm still offering 30 minutes for free to anybody who signs up for it. After that, all time is paid for. We're heading to our last commercial for tonight on the Pleasure Zone. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we've been talking about how to bring back that loving feeling, and I've really emphasized looking at where that loving feeling has fallen away, where things have gone off track, where maybe you've been negligent and not paid attention to what your partner's been asking for. Maybe it's gone too far and there's no coming back. But the chances are, if you're willing and your partner is willing to make the relationship work, one of the things that you're both looking for is bringing back the loving feeling, which for everybody can mean something a little different. So it doesn't always mean that you need more sex. The sex might be fine, but maybe you're like, I really need some of the other love languages fulfilled. I think one of the great things you can do is do a gratitude list for your partner. I'm a big fan of actually having a gratitude jar around the house. You can have a jar with your name on it. And every time that, and you each have a jar with your name on it. I love mason jars. I have things in mason jars all over the house. Like they're my go-to for all things food and crafts, and they're my organizing tool. And by all means, you can use a mason jar for this too. So your partner, whenever they find something that they're grateful about you, can write that down and put it in your jar. That's your jar. And whenever you need to know something, if your partner's not there, or maybe they're having a day where they just need quiet space. You can go to your gratitude jar and you can take one of those things out and read it and know that that's true from your partner to you. So some people like just a regular list. So you can do that too. Like write down 10 things that you love about your partner that had you fall in love with your partner to begin with, and things that are still part of their quality of who they are, and things about them that, I think it's also nice to write things you'd never want to change about them, because so many times in relationships, when there's, say, issues flying around, the thing that people are often most hurt by is that their partners are wanting to change them. It's like, I want you to do this and act like this and say these words. But if you can actually share with your partner 10 things that you love about them that you'd never want them to change, helps them know that you love them for exactly who they are right now. And if they do, as much as you don't want them to ever change those qualities, they might, but to let them know that right here and now, these are the things I love about you. And the gratitude list can be so great. I would keep the gratitude list to things that are true about them and their personality in general. So, for example, it might be like, I'm really grateful for, the way you are with, I'll use my husband as an example. Like, I'm really grateful for the way that he is with like the neighbors and community. He's people love him and trust him. And, I think that's an amazing quality to have. So those are things I would put on there. It doesn't have to do with things he's done for me. It's things that I see in him as part of who he is. So if you can't come up with anything like that, even just saying some things you're grateful for about your partner, like I'm grateful that you're the breadwinner to give me space to be able to create, or I'm grateful that, you do such a beautiful job making our home feel cozy and loving. Like, those things are fine too. Those are things that people tend to do, and and um, and they can reflect too a bit on who they are as a person. Or, being grateful for the way that your partner smiles at you, or the way that in the morning maybe they wake up and say, "Hey, beautiful," and you're like, "Wow, thank you. What a great day." So write down your gratitude for your partner, because those words of affirmation are really important, and they can absolutely contribute to bringing back the love. Also, one of the things to do is to create a list of at least 5 to 10 things that you would want to do that include those wonderful hands and body parts of yours, that would be 5 to 10 fun sexual things you'd like to explore with your partner in the next year. And if you don't have any ideas, I got hundreds of shows. You can go back and listen, or you can connect with me and we can go through some ideas, because maybe you're not ready to go too much out of the vanilla world. And I have a list on my website you can go over and download, called the do's, don'ts, and maybes list. And on the do's, don'ts, and maybes list, you can fill that out and give that to your partner to help them know what you're interested in trying out. And it has about 40 or 50 ideas that are pretty vanilla. So in other words, they're not overly kinky or scary. They're pretty common things to do sexually, with different locations and things to help come up with ideas. Maybe there's a little gift you can bring your partner. So I like to bring my husband things like treats. He loves like chocolate almonds. He loves coffee, loves chips. Usually it's food related. Sometimes it's magazines. And as he jokes, he's like, "If you brought me money, I'd be happy." So just knowing some things that your partner likes and paying attention and delivering can help to bring back that loving feeling. And then be consistent with that. It's one thing to do it for a week, because that's easy, but it's another thing to do that for the rest of your lives together, and to be attentive and to listen.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.